execution of the Romanov family is one of the most tragic events in Russian history. For years, there was legend going around that one of the Romanovs, Anastasia, daughter of Tsar Nicholas II, escaped the executions. This has been influenced for many different versions of such legend, starting with a play that Marcel Marette wrote in 1954, which 20th Century Fox adapted to film in 1956, then a second time with a more famous version in 1997. It's an animated musical film directed by Bluth and Gary Goldman, and the first good one they've made since the 80s. The early 90s was a dark time for them, when they produced poorly made animated features from Rockadoodle to The Pebble and the Penguin. The plot runs a little something like this. The year was 1916 in St. Petersburg, Russia. The revolution has begun, with the raids on the palace being led by an evil sorcerer named Rasputin. He seeks revenge on the Romanovs due to his exile for treason, but ends up drowning in a frozen river as Dowager Empress Marie and her 8-year-old granddaughter Anastasia were escaping him. Marie hurries aboard a moving train, but Anastasia was unable to get on with her and contracts amnesia. 10 years later, the young girl, who is now being called Anya, attempts to go to Paris to learn of her past, as the only hint she has is a necklace with the words, "Together in Paris," but she is unable to board the train without an exit visa. This is where a conman named Dmitri comes in. He and his partner in crime, Vlad, agree to take her to Paris because they see an opportunity to earn the reward money that the Dowager Empress is offering to whoever is able to return her lost granddaughter, as they've been previously using impersonators of the young princess in order to earn the dough. Unfortunately, Rasputin, who is now basically a zombie, has just then learned that Anastasia lives and sends his demonic minions out to kill her. First thing to point out is the film's animation. This was the first film by 20th Century Fox to be produced by their animation division, Fox Animation Studios. It really shows, as sometimes when the camera revolves on a CGI object, it gets a little stuttery, making the film look a little dated on its part. When it's not doing that, the animation still has that Bluth feel to it, though it looks as though it's catering more toward Disney animation. Which is ironic because 22 years into the future, Fox would be acquired by Disney, and then this film would be added on Disney Plus the year after. And to step a little further into the subject, the film itself feels like it came from Disney. I mean, think about it. It's an animated musical. The protagonist and the villain get at least one song. The protagonist feels as though her life is empty and boring. The villain has all sorts of spooky scenery and a spooky background. And the guy gets the girl at the end of the movie. That sounds a lot like Disney, doesn't it? Throw in some comic relief while you're at it, have the animation revolve on a CG image with 2D characters walking around the scenery, and focus on a female protagonist that is a princess. Granted, she forgot about that due to her amnesia, but it still counts. And come to think of it, Bluth used to work as an animator for Disney, so it probably seems appropriate. About the songs in this film, we got some good tunes to pick from. Journey to the Past and Once Upon a December were nominated for Best Original Song by the Golden Globes, but of course lost to My Heart Will Go On from Titanic. That song swept the awards. I don't think I've ever said this before, but I freaking love villain songs. Be Prepared, Oogie Boogie, Feed Me. Wait till you get a load of In the Dark of the Night. Listening to this song from the soundtrack, you get a feeling of a heavy rock song that could work with almost any villain in any movie if you change up the lyrics. But when you hear the song while watching the visuals, it doesn't look as cool, mainly considering the chorus singers. Don't get me wrong, it's still a threatening environment, but it's one of those rare instances where it's better to just listen to it on the soundtrack. Oh, and speaking of the villain, they seriously had to make Rasputin as evil as he is? The historical figure he's based on is a mysterious monk, not an evil sorcerer who wishes revenge due to his exile. He's done bad things, sure, but he wasn't one to go this far. However, this film was meant to be more of a fairy tale than what something like Disney's Pocahontas was attempting. That film was based on historical fact, but was heavily flawed in how it's displayed. Anyway, the film could have been fine without a villain. The revolution could still have been the cause of Anastasia being separated from her grandmother, and the story could have still been about her reunion with her and the struggle she goes through whilst doing so, both with the conmen and the Dowager Empress herself, as after she's seen a few Anastasia imposters, she gives up completely. However, Rasputin is at least a passable villain for the fact that he's all scary and twisted. The vocal performance of Christopher Lloyd makes him worthwhile. But I'm not a big fan of the albino bat Bartok. He's mainly there for comedic relief. The only real purpose he has, aside from a small moment of foreshadowing in the middle of the film, was that he finds out that Anastasia lives and reports it to Rasputin, who was still in limbo because the curse had not yet been fulfilled. That's it. Every other moment, he's pretty much babysitter fodder. He's there to keep the kids watching entertained, maybe a little bit distracted during the villain song. But oddly enough, his voice actor, Hank Azaria, won the Annie Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement for voice acting by a male performer in an animated feature production. Side note, what a long title. The Bartok character himself apparently had some kind of popularity since for some reason a direct-to-video spin-off prequel was released revolving around him, with the same voice actor and, shockingly, the same directors. Wasn't Don Bluth one not to do sequels or spin-offs to his films? I'm just asking because, as far as my knowledge goes, out of all the sequels or spin-offs to his films, this was the only one he made. Before this, Don Bluth's films were flopping, starting with Rockadoodle. But Anastasia picked up the ball and finished its run with $140 million on a $50 million budget. Aside from the direct-to-video spin-off, there was also in recent years a stage musical released on Broadway. Yeah, this film is really taking lessons from Disney now, aren't they? Well, this film was definitely not perfect. I can respect the following that it has. It's one of those films that you watch, you catch on to the songs, and listen to them on the soundtrack constantly. It's that fun to listen to the songs in this film, though the film itself is also pretty good.